Ida for breaking up with my girlfriend after she said we weren't a real couple. I guess every relationship has a moment. Not the moment you fall in love. Everyone talks about that one. But the moment you realize something's dying, and no matter how loud you scream, the other person doesn't hear it. For me, that moment happened on a Wednesday night. We were sitting in her living room, pizza half-eaten, Netflix asking if we were still watching. The kind of quiet comfort that's supposed to mean you've made it past the uncertainty phase. And then, out of nowhere, she laughed. Not a normal laugh, one of those hollow, nervous ones. And said, "Greater than you know, sometimes I forget we're even a real couple." I thought she was joking, so I laughed too, until I saw her face. She wasn't joking. We'd been together for 9 months. Not a lifetime, sure, but long enough to build a rhythm. We'd met in a writing workshop, clicked instantly, fell into each other's lives the way exhausted people fall into bed, not graceful, not perfect, but deeply, desperately. I'd been there through her panic attacks, her job loss, her therapy. She'd been there through my mother's illness, through nights where I felt too small for the world. So when she said those words, "not a real couple," something inside me cracked, clean and quiet. I tried to stay calm. "What do you mean?" I asked. She sighed, fiddling with her hair. That tiny nervous tick she had whenever she was cornered. "It's just," she began, "you know, we don't post about us. We don't have mutual friends. We don't go to events together." It's like she hesitated, like we exist in a bubble that doesn't count. I blinked. "Does it need to count for someone else?" She looked at me like I didn't get it, and maybe I didn't, because I thought love was private. Something that didn't need an audience. But she wanted one. I didn't say much that night. We finished the movie in silence, pretending everything was fine. When I left, she kissed me goodbye. Soft, automatic. The way you kiss someone you've already decided to let go of. On the drive home, the streetlights blurred into long ribbons of gold and white. I remember gripping the steering wheel until my hands ached, because I realized something awful. I wasn't her partner. I was her placeholder. Someone she loved enough to need, but not enough to claim. Days went by. I kept waiting for her to call, to say she didn't mean it. She didn't. Instead, her Instagram filled with photos, her at brunch, her at parties, her surrounded by people I didn't know. Captions like "healing era" and "rediscovering myself." And I wasn't in a single one. It felt like I'd been erased, not dumped, not blocked, just deleted from her story. A week later, I confronted her. We met at the cafe where we first kissed, because I thought maybe nostalgia could soften what I had to say. She looked beautiful, calm, confident, like the version of herself she always wanted to be. I asked her, straight up, "Do you still think we're not a real couple?" She smiled sadly. "I think we were real to me, but not in the way that counts long term." That word again, counts. I don't know why it hurts so much. Maybe because I spent months proving I was real, not perfect, but real. And she still didn't see it. So I said the words that had been sitting on my tongue since that night. "Then I don't want to be with someone who needs the world's permission to love me." She froze, and then, quietly, "Are you breaking up with me?" I nodded. She didn't cry. She just looked away. And I realized she'd already let me go long before that moment. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every conversation, every look, wondering if I missed the signs. The truth is, I did. She'd been drifting for months, talking about wanting more, but never defining what more meant. I thought I could anchor her. Instead, I became the weight she needed to cut loose to float again. It's been 3 months now. She's dating someone new, a photographer, apparently. Their pictures are everywhere. He fits the aesthetic better than I did. Sometimes I still check her page. Not because I miss her, but because I miss who I thought I was when she loved me. Because when she said we weren't real, it made me question whether anything I felt actually existed, or if I'd been building a love story out of smoke. I guess that's the part no one tells you. When someone says you weren't real, what they mean is, you were real to them, just not in the way that survived the ending. And maybe that's okay. Maybe not every love story needs to last to matter. But sometimes it still hurts to be the one left unreal. Part E. When the ghost comes back, it's strange how time changes the shape of pain. At first, it's sharp. It cuts every time you think about them. But after a while, it becomes something duller, heavier. You stop bleeding. You just ache. That's where I was 3 months after the breakup. I'd started going to therapy, started jogging again, even joined a book club which was just an excuse to drink wine and pretend we read. I wasn't healed, not completely. but I was learning to live without the phantom of her shadow, following me everywhere. Until one evening, while I was walking home from work, my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen in weeks, Leela. The message was short. Hey, can we talk? Just 4 words, but they hit like a punch to the gut. I stood there for a good 5 minutes, staring at the screen while people brushed past me on the sidewalk. Every rational part of me screamed no, but the human heart doesn't do rational very well. So I typed, greater than sure. We met at the same cafe where we'd last seen each other. Poetic, I guess. The same corner table, the same soft lighting, the same ghost between us. She looked different, not physically. Still the same warm brown eyes. The soft hair she always tucked behind her ear. But there was a weight to her I'd never seen before, like she'd been living with something heavy on her chest. Thanks for coming, she said quietly. I shrugged. You sounded like you needed to talk. She nodded, eyes flicking down to the coffee cup between her hands. I do. I just don't know where to start. I stayed silent. I'd learned that silence makes people tell you the truth faster than words ever could. Finally, she spoke. I heard you blocked me. I raised an eyebrow. Pretty sure that's the point of a breakup. She gave a faint, almost self-deprecating laugh. Yeah, I guess so. A pause. Then, softly. I didn't mean what I said that night about us not being real. My stomach twisted. Then why say it? Her fingers tightened around her cup. Because I didn't know how else to make sense of what I was feeling. I was scared. Scared of what? Of being loved by someone who wasn't temporary. That sentence caught me completely off guard. She continued, voice trembling slightly. All my relationships before you were short, chaotic. They burned fast and died faster. I was used to drama. People who made me feel like I had to earn their attention. But with you it was different. You were steady, kind. Real in a way I wasn't used to. I didn't say anything. My throat felt tight. She looked up at me then, eyes wet but steady. So I did what I always do when something feels too good. I tried to break it before it could break me. It's hard to describe the cocktail of emotions I felt in that moment. Relief, anger, sadness, pity. Part of me wanted to reach across the table and take her hand. Another part wanted to walk away forever. Leela, I said finally, you didn't just break it. You broke me. Her lip trembled. I know. And I hate myself for it. For a moment, we just sat there in silence, the noise of the cough around us like a distant ocean. Then she said something that nearly shattered me all over again. You were the first person who made me feel like I could be loved for who I was. And I ruined it, because I didn't think I deserved that kind of love. That's the thing about closure. It never really closes anything. It just gives your pain a name so you can carry it a little easier. We talked for hours. About the things we never said. About the way I felt erased and the way she felt invisible even when I was looking right at her. At one point, she reached for my hand. I still think about you, she whispered. I still think about you too, I admitted. And in that small, aching silence, we both understood love hadn't disappeared. It had just changed shape. When the cough was closing, she asked, do you think we could ever try again? I looked at her for a long time, and then I shook my head. Maybe in another life, I said softly, one where you believe you deserve what I have to give. She smiled, tears spilling over. Then I'll hope for that life. That was the last time I saw her. I didn't block her this time. Didn't stalk her page either. I just let her exist somewhere out there, like a memory that no longer hurt to touch. Sometimes, when I walk past that cough, I still look through the window, half expecting to see her there. But I don't, and that's okay, because I finally understand what she meant when she said we weren't real. We were real, just not ready. Love isn't about who makes your heart race. It's about who stays when it slows down. And sometimes, the hardest part is realizing that not everyone knows how to stay, even when they want to. Part E. When the past walks into the room a year. It's been a whole year since I last saw Leela. If someone had told me back then that I'd go 12 months without hearing her voice, I wouldn't have believed them. For so long, she was the background noise of my life, her laughter in my memories, her scent in my clothes, her ghost sitting beside me on quiet nights. But time has a strange way of sanding down sharp edges. The ache dulled, the nights got quieter, and eventually the ghost stopped showing up. I'd moved cities, found a new job, even started seeing someone casually. A sweet woman named Elise who worked at the library. She was gentle, patient, the kind of calm that didn't demand anything. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace, until one evening, at a mutual friend's engagement party, I looked up from my drink and saw her, Leela, standing across the room in a soft green dress that looked elegant for how casually she carried herself. Her hair was shorter now, framing her face differently, and she had that same quiet gravity that always drew people in without her even trying. And standing beside her, his hand resting casually on the small of her back, was a man I didn't recognize. My stomach sank before my brain caught up. She was smiling at him. I don't know if she saw me at first. I tried to blend in, make conversation, pretend I wasn't watching her every move from across the room. But then her eyes found mine, and for a second the noise around us vanished. There it was again. That invisible thread between us, the one I thought time had snapped. She froze, just for a moment. Then she smiled politely. That same polite, almost distant smile people use when they pass an old acquaintance at the store, and turned back to the man beside her. The gesture was small, but it hit harder than any word ever could. I left the crowd and went outside for air. The night was cool, the music muffled behind me. I stared at the string lights above the garden, wondering how something as simple as seeing her happy could make my chest feel like it was collapsing in on itself. I didn't hate her, not even a little, but there was something cruel about watching someone you once loved so deeply, someone you built your future around, belong to someone else's present. I was still lost in thought when I heard her voice behind me. Hey. I turned. She stood a few feet away, holding a glass of champagne, that same unsure half-smile tugging at her lips. Hey, I managed. For a second, neither of us spoke. It felt like the world was holding its breath. You look good, she said softly. So do you. She smiled faintly, looking down. It's been a long time. Yeah. A year. She nodded. I didn't think I'd see you here. I didn't think I'd see you with someone either. That made her pause. She looked at me for a long second, eyes full of emotion she didn't bother hiding. His name's Daniel, she said finally. We've been together for about 8 months. Good for you, I said, and I meant it, mostly. We stood there, to people who once knew everything about each other, suddenly reduced to small talk and the ghost of what-ifs. After a long silence, she said, I read something once, that you meet the love of your life when you're not ready for them. I swallowed hard. Sounds familiar. She laughed softly. I think I understand that now. I nodded. Me too? Then she took a small step closer. I never got to thank you, she said quietly, for not hating me. I try, I admitted. Didn't work. She smiled, sad, knowing. I'm sorry I couldn't be who you needed back then. I'm sorry I couldn't make you believe you deserved it, I replied. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It felt like release, like two people setting down the same weight they'd been carrying in different directions. She glanced back toward the hall, where Daniel was laughing with some friends. "Has good to me," she said softly. "I'm glad." Then she looked back at me, eyes shimmering under the garden lights. "Do you ever think if things had been different?" I cut her off gently. "They weren't, and maybe that's okay." She stared at me for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, maybe it is." We talked a little longer, about nothing important, about how life had changed, about the weirdness of getting older and realizing closure doesn't mean forgetting. It just means understanding. Before she went back inside, she hesitated. "I really hope you find someone who makes you feel the way you made me feel," she said quietly, say. And then she smiled one last time, a real, warm, familiar smile, before disappearing back into the light and laughter of the party. I stood there for a long time after she left. For the first time, the ache in my chest didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like gratitude. Gratitude that we existed, that we tried, that even though we failed, we both grew into the kind of people who could wish each other well without needing to be part of each other's story anymore. When I finally went home that night, I opened my journal and wrote one sentence. Greater than sometimes the love of your life isn't the person you end up with, it's the person who teaches you what love is. And that's enough. In a part, the goodbye that wasn't said 2 years passed. One didn't see Leela again after that night. Our lives split cleanly, like a river dividing into two separate streams that never meet again, but still share the same source. Elise and I moved in together. She wasn't the thunderstorm Leela was. She was sunrise, steady, warm, patient. And with her, I finally understood that love doesn't always need chaos to be real. Sometimes it just needs peace. But every once in a while, something, a song, a scent, a half-remembered laugh, would tug at that old thread, and for a fleeting second, I'd think of her. Not with longing, not with regret, just remembrance. It was a gray autumn afternoon when it happened. I was at a small cafe near my office, reading emails on my phone when a familiar voice drifted from behind me. "Excuse me, can I borrow a napkin?" I looked up. It was her, Leela. Her hair was tied up now, faint lines of tiredness under her eyes. But she still had that calm energy that drew people in. She froze when she saw me, that same split second of disbelief crossing her face, and then smiled. "Wow," she said softly. Hi, I echoed. We ended up sitting together, the awkwardness fading faster than I expected. She told me she'd moved back to the city a few months ago. Daniel and she had broken up last year. Not with drama, just quiet realization that they'd reached their end. "I think I was trying to prove something," she said, stirring her coffee, "that I could have a normal, safe relationship. But it turns out safety doesn't always mean happiness." I nodded. "Yeah, I get that." We talked for nearly an hour. About work, about the people we used to know, about everything and nothing. And as the sky outside shifted from gray to gold, she said, almost to herself, "You look happy." "I am," I said. "Really?" She smiled faintly. "Good. You deserve that." When we stood up to leave, she hesitated. "I used to think closure meant some big, emotional conversation," she said quietly. "But now I think it's just this. Seeing you, knowing you're okay." "Same," I said. She reached out, touching my arm lightly, the kind of touch that used to mean everything. Now just gentle familiarity. "Take care of her," she said with a small smile. "I will." She left first, disappearing into the soft drizzle outside. I watched her go, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. It didn't feel like a wound reopening. It felt like a chapter finally turning its last page. I finished my coffee, stepped outside, and looked at the wet pavement glistening in the light. And I smiled. Because sometimes love isn't about forever. Sometimes it's about the moment you finally realize you've let go, and it doesn't break you anymore. The end.